We're continuing our talk about college with part two. This is all about your college life and about moving into college. What happens once you do? So, it is an understatement to say that college is a big change. It's not the quote unquote real world that we always talk about, but it is a huge change, especially in terms of the amount of independence you have, the time management that you're going to need to adopt, the studying skills you're going to need to develop if you don't already have developed, and of course, the budgeting of your money, the budgeting of your energy, the budgeting of your time, just being able to be in charge of your life and using that responsibility wisely. There's a lot of adult behavior that you're going to have to adopt. So you're going to have more freedom than you're used to having, much more than you've likely had before. And for some people, this is great. And for some people, this is really, really bad. If you're not careful, you can abuse that freedom. And one of the best ways to handle this is to make a schedule for your day or a schedule for your week so that you see where all of your time is being spent. We all know that if we don't really hold ourselves to a schedule and we just sort of let things happen, we're more likely to waste time, we're more likely to get distracted, we're more likely to spend time and effort doing things that are of less importance, and then we find ourselves stressed out because there's something that is important, we don't have the time or energy to do it. So by making a schedule, we're able to see how our time is spent and organize our time and find free time within that and use it well. You should also budget your money well. There are a lot of purchases that you can avoid. If you're someone who goes to Starbucks every day for breakfast and you get a muffin and a coffee, you're probably spending $10 for breakfast. And then if you go to fast food for lunch, you're probably spending $10 for lunch. And then if you go to a sit down restaurant for dinner, you're probably spending $20 for dinner. That's $40 a day. And a college student who uses their money wisely can live on maybe a tenth of that, or certainly 20% of that instead of all of it. So budgeting your money well, knowing how you spend your money is the first step to do that. And then where you spend your money, and we'll talk more about that a little bit later. Of course, in college, you are developing a new social circle, and you should choose your social circle wisely. These people have far more of an influence on you than you think or would care to think. Choosing these people well, the people that you spend time with well, is of vital importance. Again, we'll talk more about that later as well. So, when it comes to actually moving in or before you move in, you have to look at housing. And colleges have a wide variety of housing. Most colleges have dorms. It's, your standard, like a hotel room, probably two people live in it. There might be a bathroom that you share with another room or another person, or even a whole hallway. Some colleges have their own apartments, and these are just regular apartments that the college owns, and the only people living there are students. And then, of course, there's the option to be a commuting student where you live off campus in your family's house or in your own apartment, and you drive into school or take public transportation into school. And then, of course, you can also go to school online, and there's a lot of people that do. So, several options in what kind of housing you can do, and that's going to depend a lot on your own preference. That's going to depend a lot on what your school offers. I recommend that you try to live on campus toward the beginning of school, preferably in a dorm. This is going to allow you to meet a lot of people. It's going to help you learn your way around campus. It's going to keep you very close to things. And it's going to give you more of the shared experience that is common in college life. Now, dorms are also usually cheaper than apartments, which is great, but then they have fewer amenities. Most dorms don't have kitchens, most apartments do. That's probably the single biggest difference. But also, dorms, depending on the dorm, can be smaller and apartments can be bigger. You usually have a little bit more privacy with an apartment, unless you just have a lot of roommates in your apartment. So I recommend being on campus in a dorm if possible toward the beginning of college. It's going to give you a really good idea of what's going on. You'll feel very involved and included versus being like a commuter student. It's a little harder to sort of feel involved. Now, I've done that. I've done commuting, and that's okay. It saves a ton of money, and it's a really good choice for a lot of people. Um, Knowing what is available to your school can help you make an informed choice. And I mentioned that I have commuted to school. I've also stayed in dorms. I've stayed in apartments. I've stayed in a co ed dorm in which there were guys and girls on different floors of the dorm. And I've stayed in single gender dorms where it was just guys in my dorm and just girls in another dorm. I've stayed in college campus apartments and I've stayed in off campus apartments. So I've done a little bit of everything. And there's pros and cons to all of it. None of it is universally better, none of it is universally worse. But usually some are more expensive, and with more money, they have more things. And some are cheaper, and with less money, it has less things. So just keep that in mind. Knowing what is important to you, again, is really impactful to this decision. You will want to get a meal plan. And some people think that they shouldn't, but here's why you'll want to get a meal plan. You do not want to have to fix your own meal 3 meals a day, all day, or every day for all semester. You're going to be busy, you're going to be studying, you're going to get distracted. So you're not going to cook your own food all of the time. And if you're not cooking your food, you're eating your food out, which is usually more expensive than a meal plan. Not to mention you have to go somewhere to get the food. Colleges have their on-campus cafeteria, and their cafeteria is often like a really decent restaurant with a lot of different choices that you can just walk up and get your choices. Some colleges even have fast food restaurants on campus, and you can use your meal plan to go to all of those. What a meal plan is essentially you're saying, I'm going to pay in advance to purchase this many meals. Most schools have several options. There's the standard, 3 meals a day every day, which you probably don't want. You're probably not going to eat 3 meals a day because sometimes you're going to oversleep for breakfast. Sometimes you're going to go out to lunch or out to dinner. You're going to go on a date. You're going to go home for the weekend. You won't use the 3 meals a day every day, all week, all semester. You just won't. But a lot of them have like a 2 meal a day option or a 1 meal a day option. The 1 meal a day is like for commuting students who are, they're going to eat lunch and then they're going to go home after classes. If you're in an apartment, you're probably going to cook a whole lot more than if you're in a dorm. You're probably not going to cook at all. So your housing also determines what kind of meal plan you want. I recommend going somewhere in the middle, and then when you figure out your life and what you're going to want in terms of your housing and your food plan, then you can adjust as the years and semesters go on. If you like to cook, you have access to a kitchen. Cooking your own food is almost always cheaper than buying pre-prepared food, so keep that in mind. Um, Regardless of whether you live in an apartment or a dorm, you're going to want to have access to some snacks, especially if you're eating at odd hours or if your dining hall closes in the evening. A lot of dining halls, especially smaller schools, have set hours, and if you want to eat when it's not those hours, you are out of luck. You have to provide your own food. Everyone talks about college students eating ramen. It's just the stereotypical thing. And yes, it's very easy. You can fix it in a sink if you need to, but it's not the best choice. It's not healthy for you. It's got really high sodium. At least the bargain, buy it in a giant box ramen. We're not talking about all ramen, but the kind that people usually talk about. There are a ton of really cheap, really easy options when you're looking at food and snacks for college. So canned soup is great. No fridge required. You can pour it into a bowl and microwave it. Getting like sliced meat and sliced cheese and a loaf of bread, you can make a week's worth of sandwiches for, less than one fast food trip. Um, any sort of quick and easy breakfast stuff like granola bars, toast, Pop Tarts, the little toaster waffles, those are all going to be great. Most of those you can do in the microwave without any trouble. Some of them would require a toaster, and depending on where you live, that may not be allowed. If you're in an apartment, of course you can have a toaster. If you're in a dorm, probably not, but you might be able to have a microwave. Then, of course, hot dogs or boxed things like mac and cheese or pastaroni, frozen pizza. All of these are things that are really, really cheap and really, really easy. They take next to no effort and they only cost a couple of bucks. And so doing something like that instead of going and eating out at a restaurant is going to save you a ton of money. Also, it's going to build good skills for you. If you're not used to having to cook food, it's going to be really good for you. Some dorms that don't have kitchens in the rooms, which most dorms don't have kitchens in the rooms, might have a communal kitchen, like downstairs or the first floor or whatever. And you can go there and bring your own pots and pans and your own utensils and prepare a meal. I even knew people who would all, 4 or 5 people would go grocery shopping together and buy a bunch of stuff for a bunch of meals, and then they would all cook them together over the course of a week. And it became a very social thing, and they saved a lot of money, and they had really, really good food. Some colleges' dining halls are awesome. Some of them are not awesome. I went to a school in which the dining hall was not awesome. And so that was a good incentive for me to find food elsewhere. Regardless of what you do for food, eat responsibly and stay active. The freshman 15 is real. The freshman 15, if you don't know about it, is the 15 pounds that you gain your freshman year of college. And while it's not exactly 15, it ranges. It is a real thing. Almost everyone gains weight when they go to college because in high school you eat 1 or 2 meals a day. And then when you go to college, all of a sudden you have paid in advance for your food, which means you gotta use it or you paid for nothing, and you have tons of discretionary time. So you're going to eat a lot more and you're probably not going to be any more physically active. If anything, a lot of people are less physically active. Not to mention the fact that if you have a roommate, you tend to eat more often. Here's what I mean. If I'm by myself and I think, oh, I'm hungry, I should go eat something. Then I eat something and I'm not hungry. But if I'm with someone else and my roommate says, hey, we're all going to dinner. You want to get some food? And I think, well, I haven't eaten in like half an hour. Sure, I can go have dinner again. And this happens all the time. If you're around someone and they're hungry, you're more likely to eat. When you get married, if you get married, you'll notice it happens there too. So just be responsible about your choices and try to be healthy as well. So roommate, the potluck roommate is you fill out a questionnaire and then you say, okay, I am, this type of person. I'm a morning person, I'm an organized person, I'm a whatever. Do I want that, or do I want to try to room with someone I already know? I've done both of these as well. Sometimes your potluck roommate ends up being a perfectly fine human being, and sometimes they end up being an absolute psychopath. Sometimes the person that you choose to room with is a really great fit because turns out you're actually better friends than you thought and you have all this in common. And sometimes they turn out to be an absolute psychopath. You just never really know until you're there. My advice is if you are choosing your roommate in advance from someone that you already know who's going to your school, think about not just the fact that do you know them, but do you want to be around them a lot? Do you get along very, very well, even if you're tired and stressed? If not, you probably would be just as served picking a random roommate and not risking jeopardizing the friendship between that person. Now, colleges ask you to fill out a questionnaire, and they use that information to help match you in terms of your roommate. You need to be honest. If you're not a morning person, don't say you're a morning person because then you'll be rooming with someone who wakes up at 5. If you are a messy person, don't say that you're a clean person because they'll match you with someone who is really clean and will get mad at you. But if you're also clean and you say you don't really care, then you need to not really care because then they'll match you with someone who is really, really messy. And I got matched with some people who had a very, very, very distant relationship with cleanliness and hygiene, and it was a challenge. It was a challenge to deal with. So be very honest on those questionnaires. Try to really think about the kind of roommate that you want and answer accordingly. No matter how you get to a roommate, you need to be friendly, you need to be kind, and you need to be respectful. You do not need to be best friends, but you do need to have a working relationship at least. You need to treat each other with kindness and with compassion and with understanding because they may have had a bad day and you don't know it and they're acting really weird and you need to kind of figure out something's going on and be kind about it. If you start to have an antagonistic relationship with someone who lives in your very, very, very tiny college dorm room, it's going to affect a large portion of your life. So take that in mind. You need to share the space. You need to be as clean as you can, especially in terms of their areas. Dorm rooms are often very small, so if you make a mess, you will make a mess for both people. You need to respect time to sleep and time to study. If your roommate likes to go to bed early, try not to do a lot of distracting studying late at night. If your roommate needs to study, then work out a time to where you're not going to interrupt them or disrupt them, and they're not going to disrupt your sleep. There will inevitably be conflicts, and you should resolve them like adults. You should talk about them. You should set clear ground rules. You should compromise. You should reason through them in an objective way, not screaming and yelling. There are often roommate contracts that the school requires you to sign, but you can look into developing your own with your roommate just so everyone has that sort of nailed down. And even if it's not an actual contract, having a conversation about what you honestly expect from each other is really helpful. If something happens and you need to have resolution, the RA, the resident assistant that we talked about in the previous section, is there to help you. But if you have a conflict and you're violating the student code of conduct, well, then you're going to be punished. So make sure that you are following all of the rules and guidelines. So when you move in, you need to plan accordingly for what you're going to need. Don't bring too much because you probably have as little or less space in college than you do right now. Take that space into account when you're deciding what to bring and talk to your roommate about what they're bringing. You may not need to buy something because your roommate is bringing something. And even if you have a randomly assigned roommate, you'll still get their contact information, hopefully, before you have to move in. So that way, if they're bringing something and you only need one of it, you don't need to purchase it or you don't need to bring it. This is really helpful for larger things like, a refrigerator, a microwave, a TV, stuff like that. Obviously, everyone needs their own computer and everyone needs their own sheets and blankets and pillows and towels, but some things you only need one of. You will come to a time where you miss things from before your life in college. You'll miss friends, you'll miss experiences from high school, you might get homesick, and not only is it okay, it's totally normal to happen because you're going through a really big change in your life. It is completely expected that you will have some homesickness and some trouble adapting. That's okay. It will come with time. So, in terms of what to bring, this is just a kind of a summary list. It's not completely comprehensive, but it is just an idea of things to look through. For clothes, you're going to want to dress accordingly for the weather of the place you're going to. If you're going someplace hot, you're going someplace with a beach, that's going to be very different than if you're going to school in Minnesota or Alaska. So, clothes for the place that you're going. If you're going someplace exceptionally cold, it may be difficult to find enough cold weather clothes here. You may have to bring money and buy it when you go there. You'll also want some dorm clothes, casual stuff to wear around your dorm because you're going to be around other people and you need to keep your clothes on. So, like, PJs or a robe or something like that. This is especially important if you have a dorm room in which there is a bathroom down the hall and not a bathroom in your room. You're going to want something that you can toss clothes on really, really quick and go down the hall to the bathroom. As a side note, I've had bathrooms in my dorm room and bathrooms down the hall, and both are fine. You just get used to whichever one you have. You're going to want to bring sheets. You're going to want to bring a mattress pad, which is like sheets, but it goes between sheets and the mattress. And you're going to want to bring towels. Your mattress, I'm sure, has been sanitized, but still someone else was sleeping on it, so put a little extra layer there between you and the bed. You're going to bring your toiletries, and I would recommend bringing them in a little like basket that water can drain out of. They call it a shower caddy. Um, and that lets you just carry your little basket into the bathroom, into the shower, and you don't have to keep all of your stuff in a shared bathroom area if you don't want to. Especially if you have a community bathroom, it's down the hallway, you can't really keep your stuff there. You got to bring it every time. Bring your bathroom supplies too, things like toilet paper. If you have your own bathroom, you're going to have to stock it. If you have a community bathroom, like in a hallway, you probably won't have to stock it. If you have your own, you're going to have to clean it too. So keep that in mind. You'll want your school supplies too. So your backpack, obviously, your notebook, folders, pens, pencils, post-it notes, index cards, laptop too. We're going to get to that in a second. Everything that you would need for school. Can you purchase some of it on campus? Yes, but it's way more expensive. Storage items can make a small space seem big because they keep you organized. So things like a desk organizer or a closet organizer or even organizing stuff underneath your bed can be really helpful. I've known some people that get little things that prop their bed up higher that raises your bed so that they can have more storage underneath. You do what you need to do, but keep that in mind. Some dorm rooms and apartments come furnished, they have furniture, and some don't. So if you don't have any kind of desk, I recommend getting something that functions as a desk. It's a lot better than trying to do all of your work on your bed because your bed is where you sleep, and doing boring homework on the place where you sleep is going to make you want to sleep instead of doing your homework. Having a chair is really helpful. I know a lot of college students like bean bags, but I've always found them to be great for a day and wear out really, really quick. So having like a foldable chair is really good. It takes up no room unless you're using it. Um, some dorm rooms are big enough that you might want to have like a couch, and that's great. You can, good seating for people that come over and visit and hang out. Some rooms are too small. You don't really have room for that. A storage ottoman is really good because you can use it to store things. You can use it as a footrest. You can use it to prop up your computer. You can use it as extra seating. It's very helpful. So that might be something you look into if you have limited space. Now, in terms of electronics, you absolutely positively want a computer in college. Laptop is going to be way easier than a desktop because you can bring it to class, you can bring it to the library. So I highly recommend having a laptop for college if you don't already. It's also really helpful to have a printer. You can buy a printer fairly cheap and print some stuff if you need to. Most colleges have a really great computer lab and you can do a lot of printing there, but sometimes they charge you for it. Sometimes you can't access it. Sometimes you need to print something right away. You don't have time to go by there. It's helpful, but not required to have your own printer. A lot of people really like tablets or iPads to do some work on. This is a great thing to take to class, and you can just take some quick notes on it using like a USB keyboard or the touch screen. So that's a really helpful thing for a lot of people, but it's not a mandatory thing. I would say you should bring a surge protector because most colleges don't have enough outlets and you're going to need some more. And of course, your charging cables for any devices you have, as well as some extension cords because you might want to have like your phone next to your bed, but there's not an outlet there. Bring a flashlight, in case your phone battery is dead or you just want to use a flashlight instead of your phone. Bring batteries for anything that needs batteries. Having a desk lamp is really helpful just to give you some extra light. Again, not every dorm room has good lighting. I recommend, if it's possible, having a tiny fridge and a tiny microwave, just for when you want a snack or you want to eat in your room without going somewhere. Depending on where you are going to school, you may not have air conditioning. And I know all the people from Texas are freaking out. Not every place gets really hot. Some places are stay cool most of the year. But on days that it is hot, it might be helpful to have a small fan. And that's going to take up a lot of room unless you're using it a lot. So you may not need it. Um, a lot of people don't necessarily bring a TV and they just watch everything from their computer. If you do that, you may want to bring some extra speakers, some Bluetooth or auxiliary cord speakers to just sort of give your computer a little better sound. Some people really like having TVs in college because they have people come over and they do movie night or whatever. That's great too. Again, it's going to depend on your preference and your space. Regardless of whether or not you have a kitchen, you should bring a couple of water bottles to just bring water with you to class so you're not constantly buying drinks, which is a huge, huge expense that you can cut out. Um, it's also good to bring things like cups and plates and silverware if you're going to be doing any sort of food preparation, whether that's at in your room with the microwave or that's, using a community kitchen, or if you have your own kitchen, you need to keep that stocked. And if you do that, then you're going to have to bring things like dish soap, pots, pans, can opener. I also recommend bringing a coffee maker if you're a coffee drinker. For the cost of a coffee maker, you can save yourself tons of money over the course of a year, not having to go places and buy coffee. When it comes to your laundry, having a laundry bag or a laundry basket is really good. I like laundry bags because they don't take up any room when they're empty. They take up only as much room as your dirty clothes are. So that's really helpful. And then, of course, you'll need to bring things like detergent and hangers and stuff like that. Um, each school handles laundry a little bit differently, but most likely you'll have some sort of swipe card that you can put some money on. And then, of course, things that people forget, like a trash can and maybe a couple of simple tools in case, like, the screw on your bed comes loose and you can't sleep on it unless you fix it. I was one of the only people in my dorm, my entire dorm, that had tools there. So whenever someone had something that broke, they would always come by me and borrow my tools. And that's good. It's just, you need to have them. Having a tiny, tiny vacuum or a broom and dustpan is really helpful just to keep your room clean. Some colleges will have someone that comes by and cleans your room, but a lot of them you're expected to clean your own room. You're going to need to bring whatever medicine you have that you need, and that includes things like contact solution. It's also good to have a first aid kit and just any other miscellaneous cleaning supplies that you might need. And of course, everyone's going to want to make it their own. Have your decorations, any pictures or posters or signs. You want to not use nails, so command adhesive is awesome. Most colleges don't let you put holes in the walls. So that's a lot of things to think about bringing, and you may not need to bring all of these things, but it is a good list to get you thinking about what you might want to bring to school and maybe some things that you might have forgotten. Next time, we're going to do part 3, which is all about life in college in terms of your classes and your social life and how do you balance those, how do you juggle those. There's a lot to dig into there, so I really hope that you'll join us then.